So for those of you wondering if you can change the heater core in a Prius without removing the dashboard, the answer is yes, but I don't necessarily recommend it. You'll see why here in a minute. But I've got a 2012 Prius V Gen 3 that had the EGR cooler, EGR valve problem, clogged up the intake, ended up taking out the head gasket. I got this car for a really good deal from somebody I know because, well, it was as is. Here, you can have it for this price with the head gasket problem. I'm like, all right, cool. Anyway, I get into it. I take the head gasket, get down to the head gasket, and then I'm seeing signs of head stop or head leak stop, whatever the hell that crap is, inside the cooling jackets of the block. And I'm like, oh, great. So I didn't know that. The person dumped coolant or a head stop leak into the coolant reservoir, and it went around the system and essentially plugged everything up. So anyway, I put a new head gasket on it, took it for a test drive, car's overheating. I'm like, oh, wonderful. So replace the water pump, replace the thermostat, put a new radiator in it. Basically, everything on the cooling system is new. And driving it around and everything's wonderful. No overheating and just happy as can be. Anyway, started getting cooler out. It's like 65 degrees or something. Better turn on the heater. Well, of course, I've got no heat. Had a little bit of heat, but it wasn't very much. This vent over here was the only one that blew hot air. It was about 130, 140. The one in the middle was probably around 90, and the one over there stayed at around 70 or 80. So 65 degrees out, that's okay. But when it gets wintertime and it's, negative 20, that ain't gonna cut it. So I decided to go ahead and figure out how to replace the heater core. And everybody and everything says, oh, you got to remove the entire dashboard, and it's a real pain in the ass, and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, great. There's got to be another way to do it. Anyway, what I figured out is you go underneath the driver's side dashboard, and all you really got to do is remove the airbag that sits here and a bunch of wires, and the steering yoke thing gets in the way. This plugs in the way, so you gotta unplug the throttle thing. This bunch of wires that you see up here, that gets in the way, and you can't really undo that, so you gotta really pull that out of the way. But you do all that, then you find out that this insulation gets in the way up here, so you gotta cut it and move it out of the way. But I cut it in a manner to where you can see I can just put it back, so everything's fine there. But the bigger problem is this firewall actually got in the way, because here's the heater core. Wow, it's hot. There's the heater core over there, and you just slide it out this way, but it hits the firewall. Not by much, but just by a little bit. Like, oh man, that really pisses you off. So what I ended up doing is grabbing this here piece of wood, and I stick it up against the firewall like so, and whacked it with a big old frickin' mallet 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 times, and kind of push the firewall out just a little bit. I mean, like maybe 1/8 of an inch in a couple different spots. You really don't even notice, but that's all the clearance that I needed to make, and then I was able to pull the heater core right out, except for the pipes. The little aluminum pipes that come out of it that are hard plumbed into the heater core. Here's the one I took out. The only problem are these pipes get in the way. So you end up having to either cut them in half to get them out, or this thing here is just held on by, you can't really look at this one because this one's all mutilated, but it's like 4 tabs that are just bent over that hold that in place. And if you take a screwdriver and you bend those tabs out, then you can wiggle this thing right out of there, and it's just like a little nipple with an O-ring around it. So that would, if I were to do it again, that's what I would do, is I would just disconnect these there and there instead of cutting the pipe. But then when you get your new heater core, you'll have to do the same thing. You got 2 choices. One is you can cut the pipe to get it to fit in there, or you can remove the pipe. I wasn't so sure about removing the pipe because I didn't want it to leak, and I didn't know how it was connected. I do now, and if I were to do it again, that's the route that I would take. But since I didn't know that at the time, I ended up cutting the pipe in half, this one and this one, so that I'd be able to get it in. Because, you know, when it's pulling out, because these things stick out further than this, you can't slide it out without removing these. So anyway, I got mine cut, and then I took a piece of radiator hose. I only needed a couple inches, and if you look carefully, you can see what I'm talking about. I kind of just mended her or spliced her back together with a heater core. And I know those clamps are not the right clamps to use. I should be using the spring clamps. But the ones I ordered showed up and they were the wrong size, and I didn't want to deal with it, so I just put those on anyway. I honestly don't even know if that's going to work or not, but I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? However, at this point, I've now had the car idling for about 15-20 minutes. You can see it's up to almost 200 degrees. And it's going down, up, so about as warm as she's gonna get idling. So with it being 200 degrees and nice and piping hot, I don't see any leaks, and the pressure hasn't blown my connections apart. So at this moment, I believe that this is going to work. And I tell you what, that was a lot easier than what taking this entire heater box thing out would be if I were to go that route, because that means you gotta take the entire dashboard out from door to door, all the way up to the firewall. You gotta disconnect the heater lines, you gotta disconnect the air conditioning lines, and I didn't really want to go down that route if I didn't have to. However, if this doesn't work, then I probably will. But yeah, here you can see, if you look at the connections there, that's a factory connection. And you can just see it's just like 4 little tabs that are just kind of bent over holding that in place. And that's really all it needs, surprisingly enough. So all you'd have to do is just bend those tabs out and wiggle that frickin' pipe out of there, and then you could slide the heater core out and put a new one in. You save yourself a hell of a lot of grief as long as you got good connections. Because I tell you what, if that was to fail going down the frickin' highway and it was 200 and some frickin' degrees, it would not be a good day with that shit spraying all over my feet and my legs and whatnot, and, you know, dumping 2 gallons of antifreeze onto my floorboard. It is not something that I really want to deal with. So that's why I don't recommend you doing it, for safety reasons. I certainly wouldn't want anybody to get burnt by that coolant by trying to do this the easy way. But the only point of this video is to show you that yes, you can indeed change the heater core. And now I've taken my temperature gun and if I were to check the temperature, a minute ago that was up around 150. Oh yeah, there we go. It's hot. That's real hot. I was hitting the 140 area, 47. And that one over there is the same. I can't reach it from here, but The heater core's fixed. It's not leaking as of yet, but I'll keep my eye on it. Anyway, good luck with your project.